The diplomatic rift between uh, Trump and Zelensky, between America and Ukraine, culminating in the televised Oval Office clash where only the buddies of the president were invited, has sent shockwaves through Washington and European capitals. And what began as an attempt by Zelensky to secure US partnership in mineral extraction and security guarantees, this turned into the acrimonious public dispute, leaving allies scrambling to control the fallout. And the question now is whether the relationship can be repaired. Zelensky says it can. At what cost? The clash in the Oval Office was more than a mere disagreement. It symbolized a fundamental shift in the US Ukraine relationship under Trump's administration, and Zelensky's frustration was palpable as he tried to press Trump for continued American support, only to be met with dismissive, hostile rhetoric from both Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance, and this overwhelming sense that he was being bullied, that people were ganging up on Zelensky in a way that I think is unparalleled and unexpected. Trump talked about gambling with World War III, while Vance chastised the Ukrainian leader for conducting propaganda tours and their remarks. And then you got the Fox News person talking about why doesn't Zelensky wear a proper suit? I remember when I was teaching, and there was a complete prat of a head teacher running the school I was in, who we had these big meetings at the beginning of the year, and he said all members of staff should wear smart business dress, and the person who was sitting next to me, who taught PE and regularly wore a tracksuit, said, put up his hand and said, does it matter? Does it matter about colour? And there was a hoot of laughter because he then pointed to me, and someone else said, not unless you're proposing, that your business is pimping, and I thought it was a bit rich coming from a head teacher who wore a suit that was really of substandard quality, sort of Terraline or something, and this assumption that everybody has to be the same, first of all, is wrong, and secondly, Zelensky has defined his identity. He has a brand, as indeed does Trump. I mean, Trump without his wig would not be Trump, and so this sort of casual nastiness, we can all do it. I've just done it. This sort of casual nastiness is inappropriate at this high stakes elite level, and but it's still effective in undermining uh, the characters in the drama, and this. So the propaganda tours, the suit, the gambling with World War III, these remarks were an intentional effort to undermine Zelensky's credibility, reinforcing fears that Trump's true aim is not to mediate but to disengage. It's as if Trump says, well, I can't do this now. I said I was going to do it in 24 hours. I repositioned and I said I'd do it in 100 days. I can't. So let's find some scapegoat to pin the blame on. And last night we actually saw that process of scapegoating Zelensky as the person who will be blamed for continuing the Ukraine war. It's an outrageous piece of staging, and yet there are people in the comments section suggesting that Zelensky is playing a role and is just an actor. Zelensky, like Thomas Becket, may have started off as an actor, but he's got into the role to such an extent that he embodies it. He is the president of the United States of Ukraine, and he is a better president than many others around the world, including the oath in the Oval Office. There's a little bit of alliteration for you. And the cancellation of the planned mineral sharing deal, which he didn't want anyway, which Zelensky didn't want it, further illustrates the precarious state of Ukraine's standing in Washington. But this was a piece of diplomatic bullying, and the Democratic establishment, wary of Trump's unpredictable foreign policy, has also, like Europe, rallied swiftly around Zelensky. 14 Democratic governors issued a statement condemning Trump and Vance for berating the Ukrainian president in public while appearing to trust Vladimir Putin's word over Ukraine. The outcry extended to Capitol Hill, where Democratic senators and representatives voiced concerns over Trump's willingness to abandon Ukraine, was palpable. Senator John Curtis, breaking ranks from his party, the Republican in Utah, criticizing both leaders for failing to maintain diplomatic decorum, warning that the public spat was a win for Putin. The White House, meanwhile, urging Zelensky to apologize to Trump in a move aimed at damage control, a suggestion the Ukrainian president has firmly and rightly rejected. No apology is necessary. Zelensky was bullied in public, and he was undermined in public. As the transatlantic relationship grows increasingly strained, European leaders are left grappling with the reality that the US may be prepared to step back from its role as Ukraine's primary security guarantor. And key European figures immediately have voiced their support for Zelensky. Kaja Kallas, the EU's foreign policy chief, declared the world needs a new leader. It's up to us Europeans to take this challenge. Macron says there's an aggressor and there's an attacked people. We should not confuse the two. Friedrich Merz, Germany's new Chancellor, the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, echoed these sentiments, stressing that Trump's stance has made it clear that Europe must formulate a contingency plan to secure Ukraine's future independently. But cracks remain. Hungary's Viktor Orban, long an outlier within the EU, sided with Trump, stating that strong men make peace, weak men make war. And his comments underscored the ideological divide within Europe over how to handle both the war and Trump's increasingly erratic diplomacy. Back in London, Keir Starmer finds himself walking a fine line. Having just returned from what was seen as a successful meeting with Trump, Starmer now faces the delicate task of reconciling European anxieties with the reality of America's shifting priorities. And hosting Zelensky alongside 16 European leaders at Lancaster House tomorrow, Starmer is attempting to rally private commitments for a European-led stabilization force in Ukraine should US support falter. The UK and France have already pledged contributions, but securing additional troops from hesitant European partners remains an uphill battle. But even that assumes that a peace deal will be brokered. By whom? The only peace brokerage in the offing now is from Turkey, from Erdogan. And Starmer also faces domestic political pressure, exacerbated by the resignation of Annalise Dodds. Harriet Harman says it won't make any difference, but she has stepped down from government on a principle. That's the first of the 4 resignations recently. All the other 3 were about embarrassing dodginess, and they were effectively forced to step down. She has stepped down on a matter of principle. It's a long time since we've seen a member of the government step down, whatever colour that government is, step down on a matter of principle. They cling on, they cling on, they cling on. And her departure highlights Labour's internal divisions, with critics arguing that Starmer's pivot towards a more hawkish defence policy is driven more by appeasing Trump than by long-term strategic vision. But if Trump is out, if the US is out, then Starmer's pivot has to become even more extreme. Because if there isn't any American backing, we need to shoulder this heavy weight of supporting Ukraine. And beyond the immediate crisis, the breakdown in the Trump-Zelensky relation signals a deeper shift in US foreign policy. Trump's reluctance to commit to European security, therefore, coupled with his suggestion that NATO allies should bear the burden, forces Europe to confront an uncomfortable truth. The old order is over. And the EU's proposed 30 billion euros weapons programme for Ukraine, blocked by Macron, despite his vocal support for Kyiv, illustrates the inconsistencies within Europe's approach. While leaders publicly champion Ukraine's cause, financial and military commitments remain fraught with political hurdles. And meanwhile, Turkey, under President Erdogan's leadership, continues to position itself as a mediator, offering to host peace talks between Russia and Ukraine. And Ankara's attempts to broker a settlement, while largely self-serving, may gain traction now as Trump continues to push for a quick resolution regardless of the cost to Ukrainian sovereignty. The question of whether Trump and Zelensky can repair their relationship is secondary to the larger issue at hand, whether the West can maintain a united front in the face of Russian aggression. Personally, I see a number of things in the immediate future. I think Zelensky's position may become very weak. I think Zelensky may be forced to step aside at some point in the next year. And I think he would be wise to do so sooner rather than later, but it's a question of whether or not there's anyone else. That might open up a new Trump relationship. That would be one possibility. Another possibility is, of course, that Europe significantly increases its role and its support of Ukraine. And that puts the continent in even greater danger. The Oval Office was not just a personal dispute, it was a reflection of the unravelling of the post-war transatlantic order, because there are thugs in power in America. It's as simple as that. And because there is weakness in Europe. And that's partly, well, I think almost completely down to Brexit. Brexit triggered a tectonic plate shift, which is still being felt today. Doesn't matter whether you support Brexit or don't support Brexit, the shift has been so enormous that it has wobbled the entire continent and given an opportunity for players outside Europe to take advantage. I think it's no surprise that Putin's invasion of Ukraine took place in the shadow of Brexit. I think it's no surprise that that Trump is able to disengage with Europe in the shadow of Brexit and so on. If Trump's antagonism towards Ukraine continues, Europe will be forced to assess its security architecture further. For now, Starmer, Macron and other European leaders must navigate an increasingly complex landscape, knowing that Trump's unpredictability makes any long-term strategy tenuous at best. The coming months will determine whether Ukraine can weather this political storm or whether it will be left to fend for itself in a world where American leadership no longer plays a part, is no longer guaranteed, and whether Europe actually has the capacity to step in and replace that American leadership and that American money.